money you invested. And now you're making money.
Right.
And you're making double-digit yields, and it's happened all in 18 months. Okay? I want to show you why that's happened and if that's repetitive and what you can kind of expect in the future. Okay?
Okay.
So that's how when I'm with the clients, that's what I do. So I have their statements and I show them that. Okay?
Seems like a smart way to start it.
Okay.
What happens if they've lost? Then you just tell them that anyway?
None of them have now.
Okay.
There's not an account that we have that's not way up because they're all in equities.
Okay.
Okay, they're all way up.
So you can, every time you start, you already have that advantage
Right.
on the selling side. Okay, good.
Okay, so that's how I set it out and I have their statements out there. Okay, that's what I'm doing. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to show you, okay, is that something that has happened before? Is this unique? Also, I want to show you that you were part of a very small group of people that had a massive sum of money move over to him. I want to show you why. Okay? On investing money. Now all these people have one thing in common. They all have money. In order to be part of the statistics on investing, you had to have money in the first place to be part of the stats. And this is all current. This is as of the first quarter of 2011. JP Morgan literally produces the best information possible. Let's take a look and see how people have done. And these are, in theory, brilliant people because they save money in the first place. Now, these are people running pensions, endowments, individuals. It's everybody. If you take a look at the last 20 years on tax identification numbers from 1990 until 2009, let's take a look at the end result of the decisions people have made. If people had taken their money and put in any one of these investments and inflation is equal to bank yields, here's what their rates of return have been. Again, the average investor is at the bottom end of the yield curve. Historically, you can take a look since 1792, and if you average all people in this country on investing money, they are as an average at the very bottom end of the yield curve. You have a small group of people that are up here. You happen to be one of those people participating in that. And you have a group of, everybody else is an average is down here. Okay?
Do you ever have clients ask you what the average investor is? What they're considered as far as? Because you know that
Never.
Okay.
Not one single time.
All right.
Never had one single time because they're part of the average. I wanted to define that at the start. I must not have done a good job of it. Okay, what I wanted to do is explain that this is part of all people investing money. Endowments, pensions, people, individuals, all people on all tax identification numbers. As an average, they're at the bottom end of the yield curve.
Okay.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I want to show you why this happens. Also, the goal I have is to show you why this chart ends up being the way it is. This is simply, there's more data on this chart for understanding investing than any other chart I've ever seen on investments. When the market goes down, the value on people's accounts goes down so much they wonder how it ever can be recovered. If something is $1,000 and loses 50%, it's now $500. To get back to 1,000, it's got to double itself. When people see that, they don't think it's possible. Let's see if that's happened before. From 1946 on, every time we've had the market move down, when it's been 20% or more, it's went down 28, 20, 28, 22, 36, 48, 27, 33, 49, and this one 56.
Jeez.
Okay? Happens over and over and over again. Nothing new about this, nothing fancy about it. When it's recovered, how far has it went up? And this is the S&P 500 index. Up 257, 86, 79, 48, 74, 125, 228, 582, 101, and so far in this one. There's not one single time frame since 1792 on where the market itself has not at least doubled the amount of money it went down. Now the question people have is that, well, yeah, but it takes so long to do it. Okay, and I'm 70 years old, okay? What's the point? Well, let's see how long it takes. 3.1 years, 9/10 of a year, 1.2 years, 6/10 of a year, 1.8 years, that's the longest, 5.8, 2/10, 1. The average is 2.2. 2.2
You figure
for it to reach its next height. Okay? So what I want to achieve here is I want to show you when we get done, I want you to understand why all of this happens. One of the main reasons I want you to understand this is that the main people who are going to ask you about investing are your kids. And if you can help them make the right decisions on investing, you can pass this on to all kinds of people and they can be participants in these massive returns over here. Things that you just participate in the marketplace. Now, one of the main problems in the marketplace is how long historically people are in it where they don't make any money. They lose confidence in it. And I'm going to show you why that happens. If you take a look at the market when it's at 10-year periods of time where it's averaged 5% or less, that's 10 years of investing money where you're not making any money. Most people don't have the patience to deal with that. To them, their patience allows them to look at investments from 10 o'clock in the morning till 12 o'clock coffee. And when you have something for 10 years that doesn't make money, you don't feel really good about it. Has that happened very often? From 1928 on, it's happened 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 times. It happens all the time. And that's one thing that causes people problems and is one of the other reasons why people are at the bottom end of the yield curve. So most people never participate in the kind of time frames we're in right now. The subsequent 10-year time frames following the 10-year time frame of the market average 5% or less. What's the average rate of return of the market? 9.3, 6.6, 8.5, 12.1, 17.6, 14.8, 14.3, 15.3, 16.3. And I can tell you, I know of a lot of people that don't have money, that have money investments not making 6.6, and that's the worst the market's ever done. And this is all doubling your money twice in 10 years. That's 200 to 400, 800,000. But most people will not participate in that because they have a hard time on these 10-year time frames where it doesn't make any money. See, it takes 7.2% compounded annually to double your money once in 10 years. It's called the rule of 72. If you divide 8 into 72, it'll double in 9 years. Divide 10 into 72, it'll double in 7.2 years. Divide 12% money by 12 into 72, it'll double in 6 years. So it takes 14.4 to double it twice. Okay? As you can see, this done at 10-year time frame after 10-year time frame after 10-year time frame after 10-year time frame. All following 10-year time frames are at average 5% or less. I want to show you why this happens. You see, on investing, there's basically two ways you can invest money. You can try to predict the future. That's what most people do. For some reason, us people think we can outsmart the future. And so people take money and they invest it based on what they think the future holds. We don't know what's going to happen in the next 10 minutes. Or you can invest your money based historically what's happened in the past. That's an exact science. It's tracked to tax identification numbers. It is, you cannot debate it. But what I found out is that most people don't know what the past history is. Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what the past history is. If you take a look at the markets from 1984 up until 2000, the S&P 500 index. If people had taken their money and just invested in the S&P 500 index, they would have averaged 16.29%. I mean, that would have been great. But people didn't do that again. People made decisions again that put them at the bottom end of the yield curve as an average.
Like putting their money in like a checking account or something where it makes 1% or something.
No, they put their money in the market, but instead of making the 16.29, they ended up making 5.32, which was actually less than bank yields. Now what I want to explain is, why does all this stuff happen? Why do people put themselves at the bottom end of the yield curve? And all of these people have one thing in common. In their own mind, they really got the answers. Because they accumulated the money in the first place. They did something that the bulk of people cannot do.
They got enough money to invest.
Yeah. The markets started in 1792. If you look up the New York Stock Exchange, it says 1792. People totally create the market. They also totally value the market on what is called their statement. You know what? This is what people use to pass judgment on how their investments are doing, is their statement. People look at their statement to pass judgments. That's what Warren Buffett says is the problem, you know. People should be looking over here when they're making investment decisions, not at their statement. If they're specifically concerned with safety. What have people created? We got about 310 million of us in this country. All of us like to think we're unique and different. And in many ways we are. But in the basic ways of living, all of us people are so ridiculously similar, it's almost bizarre. I don't care where you are in this country. I don't care where you live. You can be living in a 50,000 square foot mansion somewhere. You can be living in a trailer in Appalachia. Let's see how this sounds on how your life is. You wake up in the morning, you turn on your G light bulb. Use Crest toothpaste, Dial soap, Gillette foamy, you fire up your G coffee maker, you put in Hills Brothers coffee, or you walk on Monsanto carpeting. You open up your G or Whooper refrigerator, take out your Kemp's and Gilbert's milk, you put on General Foods or Kellogg's cereal. Use your Verizon telephone to check on your family and friends. You jump in your General Motors, Chrysler, Ford cars, on Goodyear tires with Exxon Mobil gas, and you take off and do whatever you're going to do. All those people, the 310 million of us, get up every day and they spend their money back in the market. Whether they agree with it or disagree with it is not even the point. On investing, it's always made sense to me to invest your money in the same place where you spend it. And all those products that we use every day are produced by what are called corporations. When you want to own a corporation, you buy what is called stock. A lot of people associate the word risk with stock. I'll give you some history on that. When you own stock in a corporation, you own all their land, all their buildings, all their equipment, all their products, all their patents, and all their collectibles. You own everything the company owns. But you just don't own any of this. You own the best. A lot of people look at land for safety. Well, if you want to own the best land, there's only one way you can really own it. Look on the tax rolls and see who's paying the most tax. Corporate America is at the top of the list. The only way you can own that is to buy stock in that company. The UP is a classic example. I mean, if a fireman or a policeman or somebody working for the city or whatever it was, a teacher, if they knew what percentage of their pay was coming from two corporations, they would be shocked. And I don't think a lot of people think about it. When you think about what Cliffs Natural owns, it's unbelievable. miles of Lake Superior shoreline, miles in the Escanaba River, miles in the Ford River, huge timber reserves, and the largest iron ore deposits in all of North America. You own some serious stuff. And the amount of tax they pay with their specific ore tax is really a massive sum of money. And if you include all the people working for them and the company, there's also a Senka company. It's called Wisconsin Energies. About 15 years ago, Wisconsin Energies bought a company called UP Power. UP Power owns most of the waterfalls and the frontage and stuff because they had to have hydro plants to produce power. But if you look on, they own miles of Lake Michigan shoreline, miles of Lake Superior shoreline. When you buy stock in those two companies, you own the most valuable land in the UP by a long ways. Buildings. What's the largest building in Marquette County? It's called the Tilden Mine Project. What's the largest building in Dickinson County? It's called the Quinnesec Plant. What's the largest building in Alger County? It's called the Neenah Paper Plant. What's the largest building in Delta County? It's called the Meade Paper Plant. You can go to every major city you've ever been anywhere in this earth. There's not one exception. The first thing you see when you go into the city is a skyline. It's one corporate building after another corporate building after another corporate building after another corporate building. Right in downtown USA or downtown major city in whatever country you're in. That's usually the second highest tax area. Water frontage is the highest. Downtowns is the second. All owned by corporate America. Nobody will debate that corporations own the most valuable land and the largest buildings. Equipment. Pelletizing equipment, paper making equipment, assembly line equipment. I mean, I'm from South Dakota. I used to think a combine was a big piece of equipment until I saw the stuff they use up here and down at these other plants around here. I mean, it's big. How much money goes back into corporate America every day? Forbes and Fortune products. Forbes and Fortune try to figure it out. Isn't exact science, no, because it doesn't include the cash economy, but it's close. See, every dollar ends up in corporate America. You pay your property taxes, the guy collecting the taxes takes his pay, and he goes to put new windows in his house, he buys toothpaste for his family, he puts tires in his car. If you take a look at the total grocery receipts and divide it by the population, in 2009 it came to $42 a day.
Is it the average American spends?
It's the average for all people in this country. I can't get by on that. That means I'm living on about $1,200 a month. 42 times 30. When you multiply this times this, that's $12 billion a day.
And all that's passing through corporate
It's moving into corporate America as an average every day. And I don't think a lot of people think about that. Patents on those products and most valuable collectibles. Nobody will debate that corporations own the most valuable land, buildings, equipment, products, patents, and collectibles. But right now, if you're going to take 100 people that you know up here in the UP, you're going to take 100 people that you know, and you're going to go out and ask them right now, how do you think corporate America is doing right now? What is the answer you're going to get?
Bad.
Bad. It's the number one answer I get. That's a false representation of reality, and it causes wealth to transfer. I got to show you what I mean on that, okay? Right now, corporate America is literally doing the best that it's ever done in the history of the United States of America. Now, when I tell you that, I have to prove it to you, because I cannot make generic statements to you without backing them up with facts. And it's unbelievable what's happening here. In fact, I think there's something happening that I don't think a lot of people even realize. I'll explain what that is to you in a minute. But as of September 29th of 2010, the 1,000 largest corporations are sitting on $2.87 trillion in cash. If you include the financials and the small companies, it's well in excess of $3 trillion in cash There's never been anything like it in the history of this country. Not even close. Now, from a safety perspective, in my 40 years of working, I have never seen places that are rich with cash that don't have a huge financial security. If you have a school district that has a lot of money, it's got no financial worries. If you got a church that has a lot of money, a municipality, if you got a business, if you got a family, if you got anybody that's sitting on massive sums of cash, they got no financial worries. They got the ultimate in safety. So then why do people, when they look at corporate America, and they know it owns the most valuable land, buildings, equipment, products, patents, and collectibles, and it's currently sitting on $3 trillion in cash, why do people think they're doing bad? Because it makes no sense. One issue drives the market, and it causes wealth to transfer. One single issue. Historically, it's almost unbelievable how predictable it is. It's unemployment. Unemployment causes the market to go down, and it causes the market to go up. But the transition between it going down and going up causes a massive wealth transfer to two different groups of people. Historically, it's almost unbelievable what happens on this. See, a lot of people think that a company that's really doing good, really making a lot of money, its stock should do good. That's rational. And a lot of people think when a company's losing its shirt, not doing any good, then maybe its stock shouldn't do so good. Because a lot of people, when they talk about investments, they talk about ones that are making money and ones that are losing money. They want to invest in ones that are making money. But historically, the companies, when they are making so much money, it's almost to the point of ridiculous. Their stock is so terrible, it's almost unbelievable. And when companies are losing their shirt, losing so much money it's almost bizarre, their stock does so good it's almost unbelievable. That doesn't make a lot of sense to people because it doesn't sound rational. See, investing is basically divided up into two different areas. The bulk of corporations in the country, about 80 to 85% of them, are companies that we can't buy products from. Corporations are divided up into companies that we can't buy products from and companies that we can buy products from. UP is absolutely full of companies that you can't buy anything from. You can't buy a Cliffs Natural product, a Neenah paper product, a Louisiana Pacific product, an International paper product, a Quinnesec product, a Mead paper product, a Marinette Marine product. You can't buy anything from those companies. They all sell to other corporations. And that's the other 10 to 15%. And the market looks at those two products very, very differently. Show you what happens here. Cliffs Natural, August of 07, $127 a share. Cliffs Natural makes one product. It's called taconite. It's a little pellet about this big that in the UP we've been living with our whole life, and we've been looking at them our whole life. They make steel out of it. They're no different than a local business. Some people think corporations are. They aren't. They're in competition for the worldwide taconite business. If customers buy from them, they're going to succeed. If customers buy their taconite from other companies, they will fail and everybody will lose their job. There's about a half a dozen companies in the world that are competing for the taconite business. So what does Cliffs do to make sure that they have product available when people want to buy products from them, that they got a product available and they can keep the business? With their inventory, they do what's called stockpiling. They make two huge mountains of taconite. And the first time I saw them back in the 70s, I couldn't believe how big they were. When they get so big, Cliffs Natural does the same thing that most companies in this country do. They lay off all their production workers because they don't need any more taconite. Now everybody thinks things are really something else, because that was 480 workers laid off the production line. The effects on that are absolutely devastating to Marquette County and the UP. It's unbelievable. They cut people back at the power plant because that's the big power user. There's not a business is affected in a positive way when people get laid off, except for Cliffs. Think how Cliffs is doing when they lay off 480 people and got a stockpile of taconite. Their overhead goes down by millions of dollars a week.
480 salaries.
The average compensation for a Cliffs employee is about $80,000. If you add up their Social Security tax, their unemployment, their group life, their group health insurance, their pension, some additional contributions plus their pay. If you add up all that together, it's about 80. So if you multiply 80 times 480 workers and divide it by 52, that's millions and millions of dollars a week. They're taking that money now and they're sticking it in their pocket. So much money, it's almost to the point of ridiculous. Tens of millions of dollars. The stockpile lasted from August of 07 until September of 09. In that time frame, Cliffs pocketed literally hundreds of millions of dollars. What did they do with it? We get to see what they do with it because they publish it in the mining journal. They pay cash for a quarter interest in one company. They pay cash for half interest in another company. They bought a whole other company, a coal company. It was a small company, but they paid cash for it. Plus they pocketed tens of millions of dollars. Now from an investment standpoint, when something has its assets go right through the roof, like Cliffs did, coal companies, additional assets, and has their cash go right through the roof, shouldn't something that owns a lot more stuff and have a lot more money be worth a lot more money?
I think so.
You would think, wouldn't you? That's what the bulk of people in this country think. But during that time frame, when their assets went right through the roof and their cash went right through the roof, from August of 07 till September of 09, their share price went from $127 a share down to $11.80. It lost over 90% of its value when its assets went right through the roof. Louisiana Pacific, 27 to 2, Neenah Paper, 33 to 3, Meat Paper, 19 to $1.50. There wasn't a company in this country that sells products to other corporations that this didn't happen to. Okay? Then what happens in September of 09?
They run out.
They run out of taconite. What do? They got to hire back all their employees. They got to hire them all back. Because without taconite, they don't have a company. So they bring them all back. Now everybody's just as happy as a lark. Because boy, I'll tell you what. They are just working and buying trucks and living good and everything else. But think how the company's doing. Their overhead went up. Their profit went down. And not only that, but in the UP, the shipping season ended. Do you know how much income Cliffs has when the shipping season ends?
0.
0. So they got a company that's losing millions and millions and millions of dollars every single week. 4.5 months of losing money every week. They're like a family with no income. During that time frame when they're making no money, losing their shirt, hiring more people their share prices went from $11.80 to over $90 a share. So when the company's making money, their share price dropped by over 90%. When it's losing money, share price went up by 300%. What happens here? The wealth transfers like crazy in this scenario. People make decisions based on how they're doing, not on how the companies do. That one simple thing. Textbooks are written based on how people are doing, not on how corporations are doing. So people make decisions based on how they're doing. Let's see what happens here. and why the wealth transfers, and why these yields over here are so massive on the way coming out. In '07, we had over 50% of the population that either owned or participated in equities in their pensions. Then we had the chain of events happen. Inventories became full. See, a lot of people, when they look at the economy, they think we went through an economic downturn. I mean, I just had two of the people, other brokers I've hired here, went to see the head of the econ department at Northern a week ago. He said they went through an economic downturn. He's the head of the econ department. Okay? He's the head guy. And they came back and they explained to me, and they said, this is a cycle. If you want to understand the economy, all you have to do is ask yourself one question. It's real simple. When you go shopping right now, is there one thing you can't buy? One. Anything. There's not a thing. And most people don't think about that. How is that possible? We got 26 million people laid off. 12 million of them are off of production lines. How can you buy a Band-Aid? Johnson & Johnson hasn't made one for over a year. You and I could go to the closest gas station, buy all the Johnson & Johnson Band-Aids you wanted. It's called stockpiling and warehousing. If you're a company and you got 10% of your inventory in a warehouse, are you going to hire anybody back when you don't have to pay somebody and you still got product? I don't think so. So here's what happens. It's been happening literally for 218 years. But there's a couple things about this one that are interesting, because that's what it'll be in the future. Corporations build inventories. When corporations build inventories and they get full in their stockpiles and their warehouses, they unemploy their people. Here's where the disconnect comes in and why the wealth transfers. People think the corporation is then doing bad when they got unemployed. They tell their friends, their neighbors, their relatives, the news talks about how bad it is. Everybody talks about how bad it is. Now, from an investment standpoint, do you want to own something doing bad?
No.
No. So what's the one thing people own that is doing bad when they get unemployed that they can sell? Their stock. See, the bulk of money in this country that's in this marketplace, over 90% of it, is in pre-tax plans. Profit sharing, pensions, IRAs, 401ks, 457s, all these types of plans. They're like mutual fund groups and that kind of thing. You can sell the investment inside of there, transfer it to what's called a money market account, and you don't take the money out. You just change how it's invested, because then yours won't go down anymore. So people sell their stock and they move it to a money market account. This causes a chain of events. The market's real simplistic. When more shares are being sold than are being bought, the market goes down. And when people became unemployed and people start selling their stock, you have fewer people that own those shares, and you got fewer people that own those shares, and you got fewer people that own those shares, and you got fewer people that own those shares, to get down to a small group of people that didn't sell their shares.
Now they own the whole company.
I'll show you what happens here. When more people are selling than are buying, this causes the valuation on your statement to go down. And let me tell you, when people get statements that are going down, they think their investment isn't doing any good. They pass judgment on their statement. And so when they think their investment's not doing good, guess what they do? They tell their friends and their families and their relatives and their buddies and everybody they're talking to that they're not doing any good because their statement is going down. So guess what those people do? They start selling too. So now the pool of people selling goes from here to here, and people's statements start going down all around the country and all over the world. At the same time that people's statements are going down, the value of the assets they're selling are going up. Stock is the only product that I know of that as your statements go down, what you own goes up. And I don't think a lot of people think about that. They think about their statement. This causes a couple things to happen, and this one it's really been something. So people just got on a bandwagon of selling and selling and selling, and the pool of people selling, the assets over here kept getting bigger and bigger, but people's statements went down. To a low of 3.9, down 56%. This money, over 90% of it, is not taken out. It's transferred from investment to a money market account. That's extremely significant on what happens in the market. As of last Friday, there's an excess of $10 trillion in cash in this account. 7 of the 10 largest mutual funds last Friday are money market accounts in the world. Never been anything like it. Never been this amount of money here, and never been this amount of money here. But now we had something happen for future investment is extremely significant. Who knows what these assets are worth better than anybody else? They're no different. The corporation, the board of directors, the people running the companies, they're no different than us knowing what our house is worth or what you got at the farm. They know what this is worth. And something happened here that for the future is really significant. It's estimated that if Cliffs Natural was going to sell off all their assets and just distribute the assets to the shareholders, it would sell off for between $40 to $42 a share. Now think about this. People are selling off these assets. The corporation's accumulating cash because they don't have to pay people to produce product because they got a stockpile. And people keep selling. And it goes from 127 to 110 to 90 to 80 to 70 to 60 to 50. And it hits 40. It'd be like us putting a for sale sign out in front of our house for $10,000. How long would it take for us to sell the house? Probably the first car that came by. Then it goes from 30 to 20 to 1180. And they know if they sold it off, just sold it, it would be worth this. So from this point up until now, the market is up 85%. %. At this office, we're up about 110. We buried the market. When people take a look at their low to their high, we buried it. What happened here? Because when the market goes up, this means that more shares had to be bought than were sold. Who bought them? Because people sure didn't buy them because they think corporate America is still doing bad. Corporations took the cash given to them by people from buying their inventories and bought back their shares like never has happened in the history of the United States of America. There's never been anything like it because people gave it to them at such a ridiculously cheap price. Rio Tinto bought back $5 billion. Kimberly-Clark, $800 million. Cliffs Natural, $200 million. It's unbelievable. There's basically isn't a corporation out there that didn't buy back their shares because it was such a good deal.
But when people look, they view as like CEOs of companies buying their own shares as a bad thing somehow? Do they? Or do they not care?
People base their own things on how they're doing. They don't they're not educated. The head of the econ department in Northern. Okay. So what happens? Okay? From a future investment standpoint, think about the scenario we're in. I mean, the outstanding stockholders own everything the corporation owns. And the corporation just bought back all these shares at such ridiculously cheap prices. So those outstanding stockholders own all those shares that were bought at 10, 20, 30 bucks a share in Cliffs Natural. So the total assets that are owned by the outstanding stockholders went from here to here.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a bigger asset owned by fewer people, should it be worth more?
Mm-hmm.
But will it? There's only one way. And that's if people have money to buy it at higher prices and make the price go up. Because if we put a for sale sign in front of our house for $10,000 and nobody had the $10,000 to buy the house, the price is irrelevant. Here she sits. $10 trillion of investable money, making less than 1%. And the history of how it's invested is all based on the employment of people. The closest we've ever had to anything like this is in 1982, $4 trillion. And then the market went on a 5-year run of average gain between 40 and 50% per year. I was working then. It was unbelievable.
It was great.
It was unbelievable. It was very good for our family. Okay, so what happens when that goes from here to here, you have massive spikes. In this whole scenario, and remember the decisions people make, put them at the bottom end of the yield curve.
Mm-hmm.
What do people look at in this scenario? What do people think is safe? In my 40 years in the business, 3 words: fixed, guaranteed, and insured. If something can't go down on your statement, it's safe in the minds of most people. In spite of the fact that since 1792, this is where people have lost all their money. We just went through a case on this one that is like nothing I've ever seen that shows the market better. I hope it never happens again, but it's unbelievable because of who these people are. It's got everybody in the world confused because of who they are. All people you think would have known better. These are presidents of banks. Most of them are Ivy League graduates. Real brain power. Everybody else thinks. Because they had big degrees. Heads of law firms. Heads of accounting firms. Living in mega million-dollar houses. All these people were members of the same club. Arguably the most exclusive club in the world. It's called the Palm Beach Club. The Palm Beach Club had one other member. His name was Bernie Madoff. And when Bernie Madoff walked into the Palm Beach Club, everybody would turn around and clap for him. Because they were getting 11% fixed guaranteed on their statement. And they thought they were doing a lot better than all the rest of the people in this country. And that's how people pass judgment on. And they lost all their money. It's up to $68 billion now, with a couple thousand clients. The average loss is $3 million. And the thing that's got everybody confused about this is who these people are. They're presidents of banks, heads of law firms, heads of accounting firms, doctorate degrees from Ivy League schools, living in mega million-dollar homes, driving Rolls Royces, all the mucky-muck of the world. Why? What did they do? They do the same thing everybody does. This line gets so long and causes these numbers, for one, the average yield to be at the bottom for basically one reason. People have opt into the same mindset of the people they are around all day, every day. They start thinking like them every day. And how can you not? If you spend 8 hours a day and you're talking to somebody all day long about some subject, after a while you're all going to think the same way. That's why when you get around a group of teachers in the same school, they all think the same. That's what that whole thing in Wisconsin was about. That's why when you get around to people at the prison, they all think the same. A group of doctors all think the same. All these people at the Palm Beach Club all thought the same. Because that's who they associated themselves with every day. People opt into the mindset. It's real hard for people to think outside of the box and have wisdom. Because they think like the people that they're associating with. That's how they think. So they eliminate the wisdom side. I had the most classic example of this that I've ever seen in my life in Munising. I had a couple that are just like on your accounts. You know how your accounts, they said, yeah, our accounts are up by well over 100%. They said, we thought we were going to lose our shirt, now we're making all kinds of money. Well, so that's what every appointment I have is like now. Their son, Kevin, worked for the prison in Munising. They asked if he could sit down and listen to this. We got to this point, and he said, Larry, we're all here at the prison. All of us in our 401k. We're all here. I said, Kevin, don't feel bad. How can you not? You went from K through 12 school with these people. They're your friends and your buddies. You know their parents. You've done things with them in your life. You respect them. And you work with them 8 hours a day. How can you not think like them, Kevin? It's really hard to think outside of the box. I said, that's why people at the power plant and the CCI and this group of nurses, it's almost unbelievable. That's what causes the wealth to transfer. Is we're basically into a group mindset in every work environment where we're at. And we spend a huge amount of time with the same people all day, every day. And we communicate with the same people, so we start thinking like they do. That's what causes the wealth to transfer. Guaranteed is guaranteed by the issuer.
Yeah.
The issuer goes broke, you lose your money.
Right.
Insured. This is the most unique investment, though, on mindset. A lot of people associate safety with insured. I've been a non-prop broker for 40 years. Everybody knows I have insured investments available, and I've never sold one, I never will. Every insured investment that's ever been issued has a huge historical default rate. That's why it's insured. If it was safe, it wouldn't need to be insured. All bond funds that are insured are all low-grade bonds. They pay a high interest rate to entice people to buy them. They bundle them together. They get an outside company like AIG to come in to insure the deposits. The most famous of these investments, though, are the banks, savings and loans, and credit unions. See, a lot of people think people lost money in the stock market in the last depression. They did. The same people lost here. There are people just like yourself. If you had sold your money out 18 months ago, you would have lost money. The most people did that. But you didn't. In the Depression, after people sold, they took money and put it in the banks. You know what happened to the banks?
They went bankrupt.
They went broke. See, a lot of people associate safety with banks. They go broke all the time. We just had one go broke in Marquette. Next time you go down McClellan Avenue, take a look at North Country Bank, which was kitty corner from Shug Furniture. It now says M Bank on it. It went broke. The key year on looking at investments for real safety is 1933. It's a fascinating year. It's a one year they wonder if our country is going to survive. See, banks, savings and loans, and credit unions are simply the most important financial organizations to the future of our country. There's not a close second. They are so important to the future of our country that we can't survive as a country without them thriving. Why? Because the bulk of the people in the country don't have any money. And they got to have a place to go get some. You're a newlywed, you need a stove and refrigerator, a washer and a dryer, and some furniture. You walk into a bank, you just got a job working for the city, they give you $5,000, you go buy a stove and refrigerator, a washer and a dryer, you put some furniture, you put it into your rental place. You pay them back $150 a month for the next 5 years. Banks, savings and loans, and credit unions give their money to people that don't have any. That's what they do. Does that sound very safe? Historically, we got about 7,600 banks in this country. We got about 0.5% to 2% to go broke every year. In 2009, it was 180. What do you do as a country? 1933, 30% unemployment. The banks had failed and people had no confidence in them. There was a 9-day bank holiday. It was 9 days where we did not function as a country. They wondered if we were going to survive. Rationing, food lines, CCCs, WPA, it was a mess. And you know that the one thing you got to get going to get things moving again are the banks, savings and loans, and credit unions. Without people that don't have any money to have a place to go get some, everything comes to a screeching halt. It's what the credit card things are all about. What do? The first two things they tried didn't work. Then they came up with a brilliant idea. It's called the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. All the paperwork was done in 1933. It was signed in 34, but all the paperwork and all the work on it was done in 1933. What they did was they decided to let banks take care of themselves. So every member bank, based on the assets, pays a premium to the FDIC. And then when a bank goes broke, the good banks buy out the assets, the bad banks, and the people are protected. It's been wonderful. It reinstilled confidence in the banking system and got our economy rolling again. But let's take a look and see from a safety perspective. The FDIC is backed up by the federal government. How far in debt's the federal government? $14 trillion. Here's where we are right now today. Here's where we are. If people are looking at safety and they're given two choices, they don't know this is the stock market, they don't know this is what's backing up the banking industry. You can own the most valuable land, buildings, equipment, products, patents, and collectibles that currently has $3 trillion in cash, or you can have your money invested in something that's backed up by something $14 trillion in debt. What gives you more safety? Well, to me it's obvious, but what are people doing? And remember, the decisions people make put an average at the bottom end of the yield curve. Corporations produce inventories. When the inventories get full, see, a lot of people I don't think realize that the bulk of U.S. corporations lose money when everybody is working and make money when everybody's unemployed. That's what they do. So when they build their inventories, they unemploy their people. This is where the disconnect comes in. People, when they're unemployed, feel they're doing bad. So they also think the corporation's doing bad. So the only thing they can do to kind of deal with something that's doing bad is to sell their ownership in that corporation. When that happens, people create an opportunity for people that know what those assets are worth. Because as more people are selling than buying, it makes people's statements go down. And let me tell you, that's a triggering event in people having a false sense of reality. People look at their statements constantly, not realizing it has basically nothing to do with the products they own. I am in total control of people's assets, what they own. I have no control over people's statements. So I deal with what I can control. If I wanted to have people have control of their statements, they'd all have their money here. Making 1%. Okay?
And always never going down, just being...
Or losing it.
Right.
Just like they did with Bernie Madoff just now. Or in the Depression. Okay? Historically, in this situation, what has happened? In the Depression, remember this one, people drove the market down by 56%. In the Depression, they drove it down 80%. So the valuation of those assets, people say, well, if it goes down that far, this is the largest that ever got driven down, this is the second largest. How long does it take to recover? In the Depression, with an unemployment rate never better than 20%, from 1932 to 1937, the market went up 92, 105, and 135. It went down 30 and 21 for a net gain of 250%. People lost all their money in the banks, they lost all their money in the credit markets, and it preserved the assets only in one place, the stock market. It was the first place where people got their mitts dug really deep, where corporate America came to really own a lot of the industry. 1933. Worst year economically in the history of the United States. 30% unemployment, food lines, rationing. I mean, there's one time banks had failed, they wondered, is our country going to survive? Still to this day, 1933 is the largest one-year increase from January 1st to December 31st in the stock market in its history. The worst year economically in the history of the United States of America. Is that something that's happened before? From 1926 on, the market's averaged 10.37% on the S&P 500 index. But only 4 out of all those years did the market make between 8 and 12. Right there. It said 31 time frames where its yield has exceeded 20%. 31, as you can see, most of them are 30s and 40s. It happens all the time. Now, what do all these have in common? What do they have in common? Cashier, and high unemployment. That's the common denominator. But the bulk of the people are in this mindset. Unemployment rates are at their peak from 48 on. And everybody's working. Which years were they? What happened when they were unemployed and what happened when they were working? Everybody's unemployed. The market 1 year averaged 17.7%. For a 2-year rate of return 21.4 per year. For an average gain of 42.8% when people aren't working. When everybody is working, the market average is losing 1.96%. Just the opposite of what most people think, and some pretty smart people. Why? Because when everybody's unemployed, corporations have money to buy stock, and people have money to buy stock. You got to have money to buy it. When everybody is working, corporations don't have anybody to buy stock because they got to pay people to build their inventories. And people don't have money to buy stock because guess what? When the inventories run out, and instead of being unemployed, people become employed. Do you think when Johnson & Johnson runs out of Band-Aids, they're going to make more Band-Aids? So the money moves from here to here, and it's a panic. And you have this massive spike, but the bulk of the people will not participate in it. And it causes the wealth to transfer to this small group of people who are buy and holders, who don't make decisions on their statements, but make decisions on the assets that they own. What's the current data? Does this help you understand why these yields are so massive after it's down 20% or more? The reason why is that when you have a corporation that buys bucket stock, it's be like if we own 8 40s of land and then we own 20 40s. 20 40s should be worth more than 8. When you buy back all your shares, you now own more stuff. Historically, that's always created massive wealth to move to the place that owns them. Who always owned them? But never like this. There's never been a time frame in the history of this country where corporate America has bought back their shares like this. Ever. But I'll show you what people have done. And this is one thing I've never understood, but this one, factually here, it's unbelievable. This is the largest percentage of increase in cash of corporate America in the history of the United States. This is the largest percentage of increase in net profit in corporate America in the history of the United States. But for the first time, corporate America has always also wiped out all their debt. Traditionally, when you have a lot of extra cash, corporate America will leverage it and get more money to buy stuff. In this one, they've had so bloody much cash that not only have they huge net profit in accumulated cash, but they've wiped out their debt. Now, from an investment standpoint, if you have something that has massive more cash, massive more net profit, and has wiped out their debt, is that a pretty good investment? It should be, shouldn't it? Well, let's see what people have done on this investment, in this scenario. They sold their stock. Brilliant people. Billions. Why? Because everybody else they rub shoulders with every day did the same thing.
Still selling like 6 months ago.
Yeah. That's what they did. So they don't base decisions on assets, they base decisions on their statement. My favorite chart, because it goes back to 1900. The red represents how far people drove the value of their statements down. The gray represents how far it came back. But it didn't come back to the same people who lost it going down. It moved from people to corporate America. And a small group of people hold on to their shares. What does corporate America represent? 70% is consumption. It's light bulbs and toothpaste. That's why when economic times are such, people do not quit buying toothpaste. And all the people unemployed, they're also buying toothpaste. But this is the difference in this one. And this does not get discussed enough. This is the largest depletion of inventories in the history of the United States. Look at these other ones. Now think about that. In order to have the largest depletion of inventories,
You have to have way more.
you had to have the inventories in the first place to deplete.
You can only deplete so much.
You can only deplete what you got.
Yeah.
Well, corporate America, the biggest change in corporate America and in jobs in this country is in one place. It's in the warehouses. All kinds of people in the UP went down to the Fox River Valley because they could do bull work. And they were predictable and dependable. 3M, 1980, 120,000 employees. 2010, 90,000 employees and producing 3 times as much stuff. Where did all those employees go, those 30,000? They aren't in their warehouse anymore. They used to be the most important people in this country on the work chain. Products get off, bull work. Put that stuff in on dollies, move it out on trains and trucks and every other doggone thing. They aren't in there anymore. All that stuff is done by robots. It's all robotic. Donnie Nemi showed me the robots down at Johnson Wax. If anybody asks about this, I've seen it. Okay. He said when I moved down here, Donnie and Mabel and I moved down here, Larry, he said that the people in the warehouse, there was hundreds of people working here, and they worked 8-hour shifts, moving that product in, moving it out. There's nobody in there. The robots are about this big. They do it everything. Don't have to pay them. It's unbelievable. That allowed corporate America to build massive warehouses because it cut their overhead, which gave them more money to build more warehouses.
With advances in technology, it could literally make bigger warehouses too, and quicker, and make
quicker.
the product quicker.
Yeah. Okay.
So it can make
and also,
more. They can warehouse stuff quicker. So
and they could also make it so they can last it longer, so because they don't have to people, and then they can keep it dry and cool with technology. There's companies now like 3M used to have to keep their warehouses like at 65 and 70 degrees because they had to be friendly for people. Now they can keep them dry and at 42, like a refrigerator, and the stuff never wears out.
Yeah.
This is increasing. Corporate America's building bigger warehouses. What's that going to do? People work longer, but they'll be laid off longer. There. Unemployment. People can look at charts and they can see that the darn cash in corporate America is going through the roof. Net profit going up, no debt. And yet in that environment, what did they do? They sold in mass to the tunes of billions. Why? Because unemployment went up. They don't relate that when unemployment goes up, that's what creates net profit, money to have financial leverage, and increased cash. Amazes me every time I look at that. And from a rolling investment, if you're planning on living 20 more years, a balanced portfolio of stock has never done on a 20-year time frame. The worst it's ever done is a 6% annual rate of return. The best it's ever done is 18.
The bottom of the graph. That's unbelievable.
That's unbelievable. Stock, you know, on a $100,000 invested on a 20-year time frame was worth $777. Bonds $333, less than half. A balance of $560. Why would you want to give up the $210,000? I don't get it. People at the bottom end of the yield curve. And now for my favorite chart. And I always say this for last, because on your statements you can see how they've done. They've made so much money. What can you expect in the future? Well, in every past case, and I say this as last because there's no exceptions to this. When you have a 10-year period of time where the markets average 5% or less, it's happened 11 times. There they are. But a lot of people don't think about this. The last one is 12/31 of 2000 to 12/31 of 2009. That's all created by people. If you go to work every day or around people every day that talk about how bad things are, pretty soon if these people are respected and doctorate degrees and intellectuals and people that work hard, pretty soon you're going to start believing it. So when you're around people that think things are bad, what happens is all the time people around, the population is increasing, and 20 people need more food than 10, So the assets in corporate America are building bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and people are getting more and more discouraged in owning them. So they get out, and then we're into time frames like now, 10-year periods of time following that. The average rate of return of the market is 13% per year, with a high of 18% per year. Never in the history of the market has ever averaged less than 7% per year. And I can tell you, there's a lot of people got a lot of money invested that ain't making 7. So here we got the Great Depression. "33 consecutive 10-year time frames. The market averaged 5% or more, with 2/3 10% or more, and half of them 15% or more. Vietnam, 29 consecutive 10-year time frames. The market averaged 5% or more, 2/3 10% or more, and half of them 15% or more. But the bulk of the people don't participate in these because they became so discouraged over here. And now to show you on people, because this is one thing that people really do believe. They believe that gold is safe. Do you know anybody that will tell you that gold isn't safe?
No.
No.
Because people always say if the world ends, at least we'll have gold to start your
Right.
or something.
If George Washington invested $1 in gold in 1802 on January 1st of 2010, but worth $2.40, because gold was selling for $400 an ounce then.
Jeez.
If he'd put $1 in the S&P 500 index, it'd be worth over $600,000. Why? An ounce of gold in 1802 is still 1 ounce of gold in 2010. Now you tell me why people want to pay a higher price for the same ounce of gold. I don't understand it. I have never understood it, but I can tell you why they do. Gold historically, I was working in this time frame here. Gold went way up here, and then it lost 50% of its value in about a month. Okay, and then it went on a 30-year downward trend. The price of gold goes up for one reason, and silver. One reason. People buy it at a higher price. When you got more people buying at a higher price than are selling it, it's going to go up. Now you tell me, why do people want to pay a higher price for the same product? Why would people want to pay a daily higher price for this pen?
No.
It makes no sense to me. I've never understood it in my life because the charts prove that gold has lost more money than your investment for people. So now we take a look at facts. Why people? They associate safety with gold, and historically gold has 2 to 3 year upward trends and 25 to 35 year downward trends. And people associate risk with stock. And stock has 2 to 3 year downward trends and 25 to 35 year upward trends. Exactly the opposite of gold. I've never understood it. But from your money in the future, from a safety perspective, your money is where the assets are, and all these companies have bought them back. What people will determine on your statements, I have no idea. I have no idea what's going to happen. I cannot predict that. All I can tell you is that for 218 years, the people that own the best assets in the Depression always had the most safety. So that's why you're there. Does that help you understand kind of what you got going on?
Mm-hmm.
Good, then that's the end of my appointments. I said, okay, I'm going to give this to you. Pass this on to your family. Pass it on to your friends. If you know of anybody that has this stuff that's sold, because everybody knows people, okay, and they just want to help understand this, tell them to give me a call. Whether they're a customer or not, maybe I can help them out. Read this over, and I thank you for your business.
Jeez. You opt to not talk about houses specifically anymore. You changed that for.
I always upgrade. This made smoother.
This is really good. Gosh. Unreal.
Well, what do you think, bud? You're more important